A wild horse appeared mysteriously in the heart of downtown Seattle, approaching a homeless veteran who had lost everything. What happened next left the entire city in disbelief, and when the truth finally emerged, it changed not just one life, but an entire community forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Sullivan stared at the crumpled eviction notice in his trembling hands, the words blurring before his eyes as rain pelted the windshield of his old Ford pickup, the last possession he had left in the world. 23 years of military service, 3 tours in Afghanistan, and here he was, about to join the ranks of America's homeless veterans. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd survived firefights and explosions only to be defeated by mounting medical bills and PTSD that made holding down a job nearly impossible. "Final notice," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the drumming rain. The truck's cabin, which had been his home for the past 2 weeks, felt suddenly smaller, more confining. The parking lot of the VA hospital where he'd been sleeping would soon be off limits too. Security had already warned him twice. His phone, no longer in service, sat uselessly on the passenger seat beside a folded American flag, the one thing he couldn't bear to sell or pawn. The flag had draped his father's coffin, another veteran who'd struggled with demons of his own. Now it served as Marcus's last connection to a life that seemed increasingly distant, like a fading photograph of someone else's memories. The sound of knocking on his window startled him. Dr. Rodriguez, the VA psychiatrist he'd been seeing, stood in the rain, concern etched across her face. Marcus rolled down the window, trying to maintain what little dignity he had left. "Marcus," she said, her voice gentle but firm, "you missed our appointment this morning." He couldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry, Doc, I couldn't." "You're living in your truck, aren't you?" It wasn't really a question. She'd probably noticed it parked in different spots around the hospital over the past weeks. "There are programs, shelters." "I'm fine," he cut her off, the words sharp with pride he couldn't afford. "I just need some time to figure things out." Dr. Rodriguez's expression softened. "You're not alone in this, Marcus. Many veterans—" "I'm not like them," he interrupted again, even though he knew she was right. He'd seen them on the streets. Men and women who'd worn the same uniform, fought the same battles, lost the same war with civilian life. "I'll figure something out." But as the days turned into weeks, figuring something out proved harder than he'd imagined. The truck, his last shelter, finally gave up the ghost on a cold autumn morning, the engine sputtering its final breath in an abandoned lot on the outskirts of the city. It was almost poetic, the death of his last connection to normal life, happening just as winter threatened on the horizon. Marcus found himself joining the invisible ranks of the city's homeless, learning the harsh geography of survival, which shelters were safest, which dumpsters might yield something edible, which doorways offered the best protection from the wind. His military training ironically served him well in this new urban wilderness. He learned to move like a ghost through the city, avoiding the pitying looks of passers-by and the sometimes hostile attention of others living on the streets. The worst part wasn't the cold or the hunger or even the bone-deep exhaustion. It was the loss of identity. People looked through him now, their eyes sliding past as if he were made of smoke. He'd gone from Staff Sergeant Sullivan, respected, and decorated, to just another faceless vagrant haunting the city's margins. His daily routine became a tactical operation. Wake before dawn, fold the cardboard that served as his bed, stow his few remaining possessions in a weathered backpack. The folded flag, now carefully wrapped in plastic, remained his most precious cargo. Some days he'd sit for hours in the public library, reading military history books and pretending he was researching for a purpose. Other days he'd walk for miles through the city's industrial outskirts, where the crowds were thinner and the memories of who he used to be didn't hurt quite so much. The flashbacks were the hardest to handle on the streets. Without the structure of therapy or medication, the memories of Afghanistan came more frequently, more intensely. The crack of a car backfiring could send him diving for cover. The whoomp-whoomp of police helicopters overhead transported him back to dust-filled skies. And the metallic taste of fear, one particularly bad night, huddled in the shadow of an abandoned warehouse, the sounds of distant sirens triggered a panic attack so severe he could barely breathe. As he fought to control his racing heart, a voice from nearby startled him. "You okay there, brother?" The speaker was an older man, his weather-beaten face partially hidden beneath a gray beard. He wore a faded Vietnam-era army jacket. "I'm fine," Marcus managed, his standard response. The old veteran, Marcus could tell by the way he carried himself, nodded knowingly. "Yeah, I used to be fine too. Name's Cooper. Was with the 101st Airborne in '69. Something in the way he said it, casual yet understanding, broke through Marcus's carefully constructed walls. They talked until dawn, sharing the kind of conversation only possible between two soldiers who'd seen the same darkness. Cooper told him about a place called Thunder Valley, an old ranch property about 30 miles outside the city, where a group of homeless vets had formed a kind of community. "It ain't much," Cooper admitted, "but it's quiet out there. No sirens, no crowds. Sometimes that's what the mind needs to heal." Marcus listened, but didn't commit to anything. He'd learned to be wary of promises and help that came with strings attached. Still, the idea of escape from the city's constant assault on his senses tempted him. The decision was made for him a few nights later, when a group of drunk college kids decided to clean up their neighborhood by harassing the homeless. Marcus watched from his doorway as they terrorized an elderly woman who lived in her car, tipping over her shopping cart of possessions and laughing as if it were a game. The rage that filled him was familiar and dangerous. Before he could stop himself, he was on his feet, military bearing returning like a well-worn uniform. "Back off!" His voice carried the authority of command, stopping the young men in their tracks. The confrontation ended without violence, but Marcus knew he needed to leave. The incident had brought him too close to the edge, reminded him too much of the hair-trigger temper that had cost him his last job. The next morning, he shouldered his backpack and began the long walk out of the city, following Cooper's directions to Thunder Valley. The journey took 2 days, his body remembering the rhythm of long marches even as his civilian muscles protested. As the city's noise faded behind him and the landscape opened up into rolling hills and scattered forests, something inside Marcus began to quiet. The constant tension in his shoulders, present for so long he'd forgotten it wasn't natural, started to ease. Thunder Valley turned out to be a sprawling property nestled against the foothills, its buildings showing signs of age, but not abandonment. A hand-painted sign at the entrance read, "Veterans Haven," in fading letters. As Marcus approached the main gate, he noticed movement in a distant field, a flash of something wild and free that made his heart skip a beat. But before he could focus on it, Cooper's familiar voice called out from the porch of the main house, "Knew you'd find your way here eventually, brother." As Marcus stepped onto Thunder Valley's weathered grounds, the morning sun cast long shadows across the property. The old ranch buildings, though rough around the edges, held a quiet dignity that reminded him of the military bases he'd once called home. Cooper led him toward the main house, pointing out various structures along the way, a communal kitchen, workshop spaces, and small individual cabins scattered throughout the property. "Most of us start in the bunkhouse," Cooper explained, gesturing to a long, low building. "Once you've been here a while, you can claim one of the cabins. We work together, keep the place running. No handouts, just opportunities." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The concept resonated with Marcus. After months of feeling like a charity case, the idea of earning his keep brought a familiar sense of purpose. Inside the bunkhouse, neat rows of beds lined the walls, each with a footlocker at its base. The space was clean, organized, military precision in civilian clothes. Other veterans moved about the property, each engaged in various tasks. A woman around Marcus's age repaired a tractor engine with methodical focus. Two older men tended to a thriving vegetable garden. In their movements, Marcus recognized the disciplined efficiency of military training transformed into peaceful purpose. "Kelly runs our mechanics shop," Cooper said, nodding toward the woman at the tractor. "Ex-Army engineer. Tom and Jack handle the gardens, both Marines. We've got about 20 regulars now, plus some who come and go with the seasons." As they walked, Marcus noticed something unusual about the property's layout. Beyond the cultivated areas, large sections of land remained wild, untouched. "What's out there?" he asked, gesturing toward the open space. Cooper's eyes crinkled with a knowing smile. "That's where the magic happens. Come on, I'll show you." They walked toward the edge of the developed property, where the manicured grounds gave way to natural meadows. A wooden fence marked the boundary, but it seemed more symbolic than functional. As they approached, Marcus heard it, the thundering of hooves against earth. Over a nearby rise, a small herd of wild horses appeared, their movements fluid and free. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. These weren't the domesticated horses he'd seen on farms or in parades. These were pure wilderness, untamed spirits running on instinct and ancient wisdom. Thunder Valley got its name from them, Cooper explained softly. "They've been here longer than we have. When the original owner, a Vietnam vet himself, set this place up as a sanctuary for homeless vets, he made sure the horses stayed protected too, said there was something healing about watching creatures that had never lost their freedom." Marcus understood immediately. There was something compelling about their wildness, their absolute certainty in their own existence. No trauma, no society's expectations, no labels of broken or damaged, just pure being. "We don't try to tame them," Cooper continued. "They come and go as they please. Some folks say they're drawn to certain people, especially those carrying the heaviest burdens, like they can sense who needs them most." Marcus watched as one horse, a powerful buckskin stallion, broke away from the herd. It moved with deliberate grace, approaching the fence line where they stood. Its eyes, deep and knowing, seemed to look straight through Marcus's carefully constructed defenses. "That spirit," Cooper said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's the herd leader, Been here as long as anyone can remember, never lets anyone get too close, but he watches, always watching. The stallion's presence stirred something in Marcus's chest, a recognition he couldn't quite name. In those wild eyes, he saw a reflection of his own struggles, the battle between instinct and civilization, between freedom and the constraints of society. That night, lying in his assigned bunk, Marcus listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the valley. The city's constant noise had been replaced by cricket songs and the distant nickering of horses. His muscles ached from the long walk to get here, but it was a clean pain, honest and earned. Sleep didn't come easily. It never did. But when the nightmares arrived, they felt different. Instead of explosions and gunfire, he dreamed of running, of powerful hooves carrying him across endless plains. He woke before dawn, his heart racing not with fear, but with something that felt almost like anticipation. The morning routine at Thunder Valley was structured but not rigid. Veterans gathered in the communal kitchen for breakfast, the conversation flowing naturally between those who wanted to talk and comfortable silence for those who didn't. Marcus found himself assigned to help with basic maintenance, fixing fences, patching roofs, the kind of physical labor that left little room for darker thoughts. As the days passed, Marcus began to notice subtle changes in himself. The constant tension in his shoulders eased slightly. His hypervigilance, while still present, found healthier outlets in watching over the property and its inhabitants. The skills that had kept him alive in combat transformed into tools for survival of a different kind. But it was the horses that drew him most. During breaks, he'd find himself walking to the fence line, watching their free-spirited dance across the landscape. Spirit, the buckskin stallion, seemed to appear at odd moments, always maintaining a careful distance but never fully leaving. One evening, as sunset painted the sky in fierce oranges and purples, Marcus sat alone by the fence, his father's folded flag in his hands. He'd taken to bringing it out here, feeling somehow that its meaning was different in this wild space. As he traced the stars with his fingers, Spirit appeared, materializing from the growing darkness like a ghost. This time, the stallion came closer than ever before, close enough that Marcus could see the muscles rippling beneath its golden coat. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Marcus felt stripped bare, all his carefully constructed walls meaningless, before this creature's ancient wisdom. "You see right through me, don't you?" Marcus whispered, his voice rough with emotion. The horse's ears flicked forward, listening. "All the training, all the medals, all the ways I tried to prove I was strong. None of that matters out here." Spirit remained still, his presence both challenging and comforting. In the fading light, Marcus found himself talking, really talking, for the first time since returning from his last tour. He spoke about the friends he'd lost, the nightmares that haunted him, the shame of ending up on the streets after serving his country. The horse listened with infinite patience, its steady gaze never wavering. As darkness settled over the valley, Marcus realized his cheeks were wet with tears. He hadn't allowed himself to shed in years. The release felt like lancing a wound, painful but necessary for healing. Cooper found him there later, still sitting by the fence, though Spirit had long since melted back into the darkness. The older veteran didn't comment on Marcus's red eyes or tear-stained cheeks. Instead, he simply sat down beside him, offering silent companionship. You know, Cooper finally said, there's an old Native American belief that horses carry messages from the spirit world. They say when a horse chooses to connect with you, it's because your soul needs what that horse has to teach. Marcus thought about Spirit's unwavering gaze, the way the stallion had stood witness to his pain without judgment or expectation. What do you think they're trying to teach us? Cooper was quiet for a long moment, considering. Maybe how to be wild again, he said softly. Not destructive wild, but free wild. The kind of wild that knows its own truth and isn't afraid to live it. The words resonated deep in Marcus's chest, touching something that had been locked away since his first deployment. He thought about how the military had trained the wildness out of him, replaced it with discipline and control, necessary tools for survival in war, perhaps, but chains that now bound him to his trauma. I don't know if I remember how to be free, Marcus admitted, voicing a fear he hadn't even acknowledged to himself. Cooper's hand came to rest on his shoulder, solid and grounding. That's why they're here, to remind us. Every day they choose their freedom, despite the fences, despite the civilization encroaching on their world. They choose to run, to live, to be exactly what they are. As if in response to Cooper's words, a distant whinny echoed across the darkened valley, followed by the thunder of hooves. Somewhere out there, Spirit and his herd ran beneath the stars, untamed and unafraid. That night, Marcus dreamed again of running with the horses. But this time, he wasn't just watching. He was among them, his own spirit as wild and free as theirs. When he woke, the first light of dawn was just touching the eastern sky, and for the first time in years he felt something like hope stirring in his chest. In the weeks that followed, Marcus fell into the rhythm of life at Thunder Valley. Each morning began with the sound of horses in the distance, their hoofbeats a natural alarm clock that stirred something primal in his soul. He found himself taking on more responsibilities around the ranch, his military training seamlessly adapting to civilian tasks. The precision that once served him in combat now helped him organize supply runs and maintenance schedules. Kelly, the mechanic, took him under her wing in the workshop. Her own story emerged in bits and pieces as they worked together. 3 tours in Iraq, a Purple Heart, and battles with PTSD that mirrored his own. Under her guidance, Marcus learned to repair engines, finding peace in the logical progression of mechanical problems and solutions. It's like meditation, Kelly explained one day, her hands deep in the guts of an old tractor. When I'm working on these machines, everything else falls away. The nightmares, the anxiety, the feeling that I don't belong in the civilian world. It all becomes background noise. Marcus understood exactly what she meant. The focused work provided an anchor, much like the mission-oriented mindset of his military days, but without the associated trauma. It was healing through purpose, recovery through responsibility. The garden flourished under Tom and Jack's care, and Marcus often joined them in the early mornings, learning the art of coaxing life from the earth. The 2 Marine veterans had their own wisdom to share, earned through years of struggling with their demons. "You know what saved me?" Tom said one morning as they harvested tomatoes. "Learning that growth takes time. You can't rush a plant any more than you can rush healing. Some days all you can do is tend the soil and trust the process." But it was the horses that continued to draw Marcus most powerfully. Spirit, the majestic buckskin stallion, maintained his distance, but seemed to appear at crucial moments. especially. When Marcus's thoughts turned dark, there was something about the horse's presence that grounded him, connecting him to a part of himself he thought had died in Afghanistan. One particularly difficult night, when memories of fallen comrades threatened to overwhelm him, Marcus found himself walking to the fence line under a star-filled sky. Spirit emerged from the darkness like a ghost, closer than ever before. The stallion's eyes held ancient wisdom, and in them Marcus saw his own pain reflected and transformed. "I don't know how to let go," Marcus whispered to the horse. "They trusted me to bring them home, and I failed." Spirit's ears flicked forward, listening. The horse moved closer, close enough that Marcus could feel its warm breath. In that moment, something shifted inside him. The weight of guilt and responsibility he'd carried for so long began to feel lighter, not because it was gone, but because he was finally allowing himself to share it. The breakthrough came unexpectedly one autumn morning. Marcus was repairing a section of fence when he heard an unusual commotion from the horse pasture. Spirit's herd was agitated, moving in tight circles around something in the tall grass. As Marcus watched, he realized with a start that one of the younger horses had become tangled in some old barbed wire. Without thinking, Marcus vaulted the fence. His combat medical training kicked in. Assess the situation, maintain calm, act decisively. The young horse was panicking, its struggles only making the entanglement worse. The rest of the herd, including Spirit, watched intently from a short distance. "Easy there," Marcus murmured, approaching slowly with his hands visible. "I'm here to help." The injured horse's eyes rolled with fear, but something in Marcus's calm demeanor seemed to reach it. As he got closer, he could see that the barbed wire had wrapped around the horse's leg, cutting into the flesh. Blood matted the animal's coat, but the wounds didn't appear life-threatening if they could be treated quickly. Marcus worked methodically, speaking in low, soothing tones as he carefully unwound the cruel metal. The horse trembled, but remained, still, as if understanding that this human meant help, not harm. When the last strand came free, Marcus quickly examined the wounds, relieved to find them superficial. It wasn't until he stepped back that he realized Spirit had moved closer, standing just a few feet away. The stallion's presence was commanding, but not threatening. Their eyes met, and Marcus felt a profound connection, an understanding that transcended species. In that moment, he wasn't a broken soldier or a homeless veteran. He was simply a being helping another being, acting from the purest part of his nature. The event marked a turning point. Word of Marcus's calm handling of the crisis spread through the Thunder Valley community. Cooper, who had witnessed the entire scene, approached him later that day. "You've got a gift," the older veteran said. "The way you handled that situation, it was like watching a horse whisperer in action." Marcus shook his head. "I just did what needed to be done." "Exactly," Cooper replied with a knowing smile. "You acted from instinct, from the heart. That's what these horses respond to, authenticity. They don't care about our ranks or our past mistakes. They see us for who we really are." In the days that followed, Marcus found himself spending more time with the herd. He didn't try to approach them directly or impose his presence, but rather allowed them to choose when and how to interact. Spirit, especially, seemed to recognize something in him, often grazing nearby as Marcus worked on fence repairs or simply sat in quiet contemplation. Other veterans at Thunder Valley noticed the change in him. The haunted look in his eyes began to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence. He slept better, the nightmares less frequent. When they did come, the sound of distant hoofbeats would often pull him back to the present, grounding him in the reality of his new life. Kelly found him one evening by the fence, watching Spirit lead the herd in their evening rituals. "You're different," she observed. "Since that day with the injured horse, you carry yourself differently." Marcus considered her words. I think I'm starting to remember who I was before the war, not trying to be that person again exactly, but finding a new way to be whole." "The horses help with that," Kelly nodded. "They don't see us as broken things that need fixing. They see us as we are right now, in this moment, and somehow that makes it easier to see ourselves that way too." As autumn deepened into winter, Thunder Valley transformed. The gardens were put to bed under thick layers of mulch. The workshop focused on winter preparations, and the horses grew thick, shaggy coats. But the real transformation was happening within the veterans themselves, particularly Marcus. He began helping other new arrivals adjust to life at the sanctuary, sharing the wisdom he'd gained. His military leadership skills found new expression in organizing work crews and mentoring others who, like him, were struggling to find their place in the world. One cold morning, as snow dusted the valley, Marcus stood at the fence line watching. Spirit and his herd moved through the whitened landscape. The stallion's coat had darkened with the season, but his presence remained as magnificent as ever. As Marcus watched, he realized something profound. He no longer felt like an outsider looking in at life. He was part of something again, something wild and real and healing. Cooper joined him, their breath fogging in the winter air. "You know," the older veteran said, "when I first came here, I thought these horses needed saving. Took me a long time to realize they were the ones saving us." Marcus nodded, understanding completely. Through Spirit and the other horses, he had rediscovered parts of himself he thought were lost forever. Not just the warrior, but the protector, the healer, the human being capable of connection and growth. "They remind us that freedom isn't just about where you are," Marcus said softly, watching Spirit lead his herd through the snowy field. "It's about who you choose to be, every single day." The stallion turned, catching Marcus's eye across the distance. In that moment, both man and horse stood perfectly still, acknowledging a bond that had grown from mutual respect and understanding. They were different species, but they shared something essential: the courage to remain wild and free in a world that often demanded conformity and surrender. As the snow continued to fall, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace settle over him. He was no longer running from his past or fighting against his present. Like Spirit, he had found his own way to be both strong and gentle, both wild and wise. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in years he was ready to walk it with his head held high, his spirit as untamed as the horses that had helped him find his way home. Spring arrived at Thunder Valley with an explosion of wildflowers and new possibilities. Marcus, now fully integrated into the community, had earned his own cabin, a small but dignified space he'd helped renovate himself. The walls, once bare, now held photographs of Spirit and his herd, captured during their most majestic moments. His father's folded flag occupied a place of honor near the window, where morning light could catch its carefully preserved fabric. The sanctuary's reputation had grown over the winter. More veterans found their way to the valley, each carrying their own burdens of war and loss. Marcus discovered he had a natural talent for helping newcomers adjust. his own journey serving as a blueprint for others seeking healing. One morning, as Marcus repaired equipment in the workshop, Kelly burst in with urgent news. "They're shutting us down," she announced, her voice tight with controlled anger. She handed him a letter bearing an official county seal, property taxes, zoning violations, some nonsense about unauthorized use of agricultural land. Marcus scanned the document, his heart sinking. The county was demanding substantial payments and improvements to bring the property up to code. "How much time do we have?" 90 days, Kelly replied grimly. "Cooper's been trying to handle this quietly, but—" She trailed off, running a hand through her short-cropped hair. "We're out of options." The news spread through Thunder Valley like wildfire. That evening, veterans gathered in the main house, the atmosphere tense with worry. Cooper stood before them, his weathered face showing the strain of leadership in crisis. "I won't sugarcoat this," he began. "The county's been looking for reasons to shut us down for years. They see more value in developing this land than in healing broken soldiers." His voice carried the weight of bitter experience. "We've got some savings, but nowhere near enough to meet their demands." Marcus listened, his mind racing. The thought of losing Thunder Valley, of all these veterans being forced back onto the streets, of Spirit and his herd losing their protected home, was unbearable. As others voiced their fears and frustrations, he found himself standing. "What if we went public?" The words came naturally, born of military strategy and newfound purpose. "The county wants to avoid bad publicity. We've got dozens of success stories right here, veterans who've turned their lives around because of this place." Kelly nodded enthusiastically. "I've got contacts at the local news stations. They're always looking for stories about veteran issues." "And the horses," Marcus continued, warming to the idea. "People love wild horses. If they knew the county was threatening both veterans and protected wildlife." The energy in the room shifted from despair to determination. Ideas began flowing. Fundraisers, social media campaigns, petition drives. Thunder Valley had saved them all in different ways. Now it was their turn to save it. The next few weeks became a different kind of battle, one fought with press releases and public sentiment, rather than weapons. Marcus found himself at the forefront, his natural leadership abilities emerging in a new context. He spoke to reporters, sharing his journey from homeless veteran to finding purpose among the wild horses. The story caught fire, spreading beyond local news to national outlets. Something about the combination of wounded warriors and wild horses struck a chord with the public. Donations began trickling in, then flowing steadily as more people learned about Thunder Valley's mission. But it was an unexpected encounter that truly turned the tide. One morning, while checking the perimeter fences, Marcus spotted an expensive SUV approaching the property. A woman emerged, sharply dressed, professional, radiating authority. His first instinct was wariness until he recognized her. "Dr. Rodriguez?" His former VA psychiatrist smiled warmly. "Hello, Marcus, you're looking well." She gestured at the property, quite different from the VA parking lot. As they walked the grounds, Marcus shared Thunder Valley's story, not just the current crisis, but its deeper mission of healing through connection with the wild horses. Dr. Rodriguez listened intently, occasionally making notes on her tablet. "The VA has been looking for alternative therapy programs," she said finally, "especially ones with proven success rates. Your story, all of these stories, they're exactly what we need to show. The traditional treatment isn't the only path." to healing. Hope flickered in Marcus's chest. Are you saying the VA might help? I'm saying this could become a pilot program, official recognition, funding, proper facilities. She paused, watching spirits herd in the distance. But we'd need to document everything. Prove that this connection between veterans and wild horses isn't just anecdotal. The prospect was both exciting and concerning. The horses stay wild, Marcus said firmly. That's non-negotiable. Their freedom is what makes this work. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. I understand. What if we structured it as a wildlife sanctuary that happens to help veterans rather than the other way around? The VA provides support for the therapy program, while the horses remain protected and untamed. The idea took root and grew. Over the following weeks, more VA officials visited, accompanied by wildlife experts and mental health specialists. They all saw what Marcus had discovered, that there was something uniquely healing about the combination of veteran community and wild spirit. Support poured in from unexpected sources. Local businesses offered materials for repairs and improvements. A law firm specializing in veteran affairs took on their zoning battle pro bono. Even Tom, the skeptical rancher who had once warned about wild horses, became an advocate, speaking at county meetings about the value of Thunder Valley to the community. But the most powerful testimony came from the veterans themselves. One by one, they shared their stories of transformation. A former Marine who hadn't spoken in years found his voice while watching the sunset with spirits herd. A Navy corpsman with severe PTSD learned to sleep through the night, lulled by the distant sound of hoofbeats. An Army sergeant who had attempted suicide 3 times discovered a reason to live in caring for injured wild horses. Marcus watched it all with a deep sense of pride and purpose. The scared, homeless veteran who had arrived at Thunder Valley's gates seemed like a different person. Now, he had found not just healing, but a mission, ensuring that other veterans would have the same opportunity to reconnect with their wild spirits. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Marcus stood at the fence, line with Dr. Rodriguez. Spirit approached, closer than he'd ever come to a stranger, his presence both regal and reassuring. I understand now, Dr. Rodriguez said softly. When you first told me about this place, I thought it was just another form of animal therapy. But it's more than that, isn't it? These horses, they're not pets or tools. They're mirrors showing us what we could be if we let go of our fear. Marcus nodded, watching as Spirit led his herd in their evening ritual. They remind us that being broken doesn't mean being defeated, that sometimes the wildest parts of ourselves, the parts society tells us to suppress, are exactly what we need to heal. The VA's support, combined with the community fundraising efforts, not only saved Thunder Valley, but transformed it. The county's demands were met and exceeded. New facilities were built with careful consideration for both veteran needs and wildlife preservation. Most importantly, the horses remained free, their territory protected and expanded. As spring bloomed into summer, Marcus stood on the porch of his cabin, watching new veterans arrive. Each carried their own wounds, visible and invisible, but in their eyes he could see the same spark of hope he'd felt on his first day. Spirit and his herd moved across the distant fields, their freedom a constant reminder that healing wasn't about returning to who you were, but discovering who you could become. The flag in his cabin window caught the morning light, its colors somehow brighter now. It no longer represented just loss and sacrifice, but also renewal and purpose. Like the wild horses that had helped him find his way, Marcus had learned that true freedom wasn't the absence of boundaries, but the courage to be authentically yourself within them. A distant whinny drew his attention back to the fields. Spirit stood at the fence line, his gaze steady and knowing. Man and horse regarded each other with mutual respect, two beings who had found their purpose in helping others find their way back to themselves. In that moment, Marcus knew that his journey from homeless veteran to healing guide was just the beginning of a much larger story, one that would continue to unfold with each new sunrise over Thunder Valley. Thunder Valley's transformation brought new challenges and opportunities. As summer reached its peak, the sanctuary buzzed with activity. Construction crews worked alongside veterans to expand facilities, while wildlife experts conducted studies on the interaction between the horses and the healing program. Marcus found himself juggling multiple roles: mentor, coordinator, and advocate for maintaining the delicate balance between progress and preservation. One scorching afternoon, while supervising the building of a new medical facility, Marcus noticed unusual movement in the horse pasture. Spirit's herd was acting strangely, clustered tightly together, their usual calm replaced by nervous energy. Years of observing them had taught him to read their behavior, and something was definitely wrong. Grabbing his binoculars, Marcus scanned the distant ridgeline. What he saw made his blood run cold. A group of mountain lions, 3 of them, were stalking the herd's younger members. While predator-prey relationships were natural, the sanctuary's expanded territory had brought new wildlife conflicts they hadn't anticipated. Without hesitation, Marcus radioed for backup. Kelly and several other veterans responded immediately, their military training kicking in as they formulated a rapid response plan. They needed to protect the horses without harming the mountain lions, a delicate balance that reflected Thunder Valley's entire philosophy. "We've got to create a barrier," Marcus directed, his voice steady despite the urgency. "Get the utility. Vehicles make noise, but don't threaten the cats directly. Give them an escape route away from the herd." The plan worked, mostly. The mountain lions retreated, but not before one of the younger horses, a yearling colt Marcus had watched grow from birth, was injured. The wound wasn't fatal, but it highlighted a new challenge: maintaining the wildness of the sanctuary while ensuring the safety of all its inhabitants. This incident sparked intense discussion among Thunder Valley's leadership. Some argued for more fencing, others for hiring professional wildlife managers. Marcus found himself in the middle, understanding both the need for safety and the importance of preserving the natural balance that made the sanctuary special. During one particularly heated debate, a new veteran named Sarah recently arrived from active duty spoke up. "Maybe we're looking at this wrong," she suggested. "In the military, we learned that the best defense isn't always a barrier. It's understanding and adapting to the environment." Her words struck a chord. Rather than trying to separate the wildlife, they began developing a more holistic approach. They brought in experts in predator behavior, installed early warning systems that didn't interfere with the natural environment, and created education programs for new arrivals about living alongside wildlife. Spirit, as if sensing the shift in approach, began exhibiting new behaviors. The stallion started posting sentries from his herd, establishing lookout points that gave better visibility of the surrounding territory. Marcus watched in amazement as the horses adapted, becoming more aware and resilient rather than dependent on human protection. This development led to an unexpected breakthrough in the veteran rehabilitation program. "Look at what Spirit's teaching us," Marcus explained to a group of new arrivals. "Instead of letting fear drive us to build walls, we can learn to be more aware, more adaptable. It's not about eliminating threats, it's about developing the confidence to handle whatever comes our way." The philosophy resonated deeply with the veterans. Many of them had tried to deal with their PTSD by isolating themselves, building emotional walls as thick as any physical barrier. Watching the wild horses maintain their freedom while developing natural defensive strategies offered a powerful metaphor for their own healing. Sarah, who had suggested the new approach, became particularly invested in this aspect of the program. A former military intelligence officer, she began developing a curriculum that combined situational awareness training with emotional regulation techniques, using the horses as both teachers and metaphors. In the field, we learned to read the environment, to sense danger before it arrived, she explained during one session. These horses do the same thing naturally. They don't live in fear, but they stay aware. That's the balance we need to find in our own lives. The sanctuary's reputation continued to grow, but now with an added dimension. It wasn't just about healing through connection with wild horses. It was about learning to be both wild and wise, free yet aware, natural but adaptable. One evening, as Marcus walked the property with Dr. Rodriguez during her monthly visit, they came across Spirit's herd demonstrating this new behavior. The horses moved with practiced precision, the younger members protected in the center while experienced adults maintained a vigilant perimeter. "It's remarkable," Dr. Rodriguez observed. "They've evolved their behavior without losing their essential nature. That's exactly what we're trying to help veterans do, adapt to civilian life, without losing their warrior spirit." The success of this approach led to Thunder Valley being featured in several academic studies on innovative trauma treatment. Researchers were particularly interested in how the veterans' observation of natural adaptive behaviors helped them develop healthier responses to their own triggers and challenges. But the most powerful validation came from the veterans themselves. Marcus watched as survivors of severe trauma, who had previously been unable to leave their rooms without checking every corner for threats, learned to move through the world with Spirit's balanced awareness, alert but not afraid, cautious but not paralyzed. The mountain lion incident had another unexpected effect. It brought the local ranching community closer to Thunder Valley. Tom, the once skeptical rancher, began regularly attending sanctuary events, sharing his own expertise in predator management and gradually becoming one of their strongest allies. "You know," Tom said one evening as he and Marcus watched Spirit's herd move through their evening rituals, "I used to think wild meant dangerous, uncontrolled. But watching these horses working with you folks, I'm starting to see it differently. Wild isn't about being out of control. It's about being true to your nature while respecting the nature of everything around you." As autumn approached, again, Thunder Valley hosted its first official Wildlife and Warrior Wisdom Symposium, bringing together mental health professionals, wildlife experts, and veteran advocates from across the country. The event showcased how the sanctuary's approach to both wildlife management and veteran rehabilitation had evolved into something unique and powerful. Marcus, standing at the podium to deliver the keynote address, felt Spirit's presence before he saw him. The stallion had appeared at the fence line behind the gathering, his herd spread out behind him in their new, more strategic formation. The synchronicity of the moment wasn't lost on anyone present. "What we've learned here," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the attentive crowd, "is that true healing doesn't come from controlling our environment or ourselves. It comes from developing the wisdom to navigate life's challenges while maintaining our essential nature. These horses haven't become less wild because they've learned to watch for mountain lions. They've become more fully themselves, and they're teaching us to do the same." The applause that followed was punctuated by the sound of Spirit's commanding whinny, as if the stallion was adding his own endorsement to Marcus's words. The moment crystallized everything Thunder Valley had become a place where the wild and the wounded could find not just safety but transformation. That evening, as the symposium participants departed, Marcus stood at his favorite spot by the fence line. Spirit approached closer than ever before, his presence both powerful and peaceful. In the stallion's eyes, Marcus saw reflected the truth. They had all discovered that healing wasn't about taming the wild within, but about learning to let it run free while keeping wisdom as a constant companion. The sun set over Thunder Valley, painting the sky in brilliant colors that seemed to celebrate the sanctuary's evolution. In the distance, the horses moved with their new awareness, their freedom now enhanced, rather than limited by their adaptation to challenge. And in that moment, Marcus knew that they had discovered something profound, a way to be both wild and wise, free and focused, natural and new. Winter descended on Thunder Valley with unexpected ferocity. Record-breaking snowstorms isolated the sanctuary, transforming the landscape into a challenging wilderness that tested both humans and horses alike. Marcus stood at his cabin window, watching Spirit's herd navigate the deep drifts with remarkable adaptation, their usual graceful movements altered but no less magnificent. The harsh conditions brought new obstacles. Supply routes were cut off, the solar power system struggled under the weight of ice, and keeping the facilities warm became a constant battle. But it was during this crisis that Thunder Valley's community truly showed its strength. Veterans with cold weather combat experience organized survival training sessions. Those with engineering backgrounds modified the heating systems for greater efficiency. Even the newest arrivals found ways to contribute, their military training transforming crisis into opportunity. Sarah, the former intelligence officer, emerged as a natural coordinator. In Afghanistan, we learned that extreme weather isn't just a challenge. It's a teacher, she explained during an emergency planning meeting. It shows us our vulnerabilities, but also our strengths. The isolation fostered a deeper connection between the veterans and the wild horses. Unable to rely on regular supply deliveries, they had to work in harmony with the natural environment. Just as Spirit's herd did, Marcus observed how the horses had already adapted, conserving energy by moving less, finding sheltered spots against the wind, working together to clear paths through the snow. One particularly brutal night, as temperatures plummeted below zero, the sanctuary's main generator failed. The emergency that followed became a defining moment for Thunder Valley. Veterans worked in shifts through the darkness, their breath freezing in the air as they struggled to restore power before the water systems froze. In the midst of this crisis, Marcus noticed something extraordinary. Spirit's herd had moved closer to the buildings than ever before, using their bodies to break the wind that threatened the workers. It was as if they sensed the human struggle and offered what help they could while maintaining their wild nature. "Look at that," Cooper said, his voice filled with wonder as they worked on the generator. "They're not just surviving alongside us, they're working with us, in their own way." The collaboration between humans and horses during the winter crisis caught the attention of researchers studying animal-human interaction. Dr. Elena Martinez, a renowned behavioral scientist, arrived as soon as the roads cleared, eager to document this unique relationship. "What you've created here goes beyond traditional therapy models," she observed, watching the horses and veterans move through their synchronized morning routines. "This is true coexistence, each group maintaining its independence while supporting the other's survival." The winter's challenges led to innovations in the sanctuary's program. Veterans began incorporating survival skills training with horse observation, learning how the wild animals naturally dealt with extreme conditions. This knowledge proved therapeutic, offering practical skills while fostering a deeper connection to the natural world. Marcus found himself leading many of these sessions, sharing insights gained from countless hours observing Spirit's herd. "Watch how they move," he would tell new arrivals, pointing out the horses' efficient use of energy. "They don't fight the environment, they work with it. There's a lesson there for all of us." The harsh winter also brought unexpected healing. Many veterans found that the physical demands of survival left less room for PTSD symptoms. The need to stay present and focused on immediate challenges provided natural therapy, while the horse's calm presence in the face of adversity offered a powerful example of resilience. Kelly discovered this firsthand when her usual nightmares began to fade. "It's like the horses are teaching us a different way to handle stress," she explained during a group session. "They stay alert without being anxious, aware without being afraid. I'm starting to understand that difference in my own body." As winter deepened, Thunder Valley's community grew closer. Evening gatherings in the main house became a cherished tradition, with veterans sharing stories, skills, and support. The horses' nighttime sounds provided a constant reminder of the wild spirit that had drawn them all to this place. One evening, during a particularly powerful storytelling session, a new veteran named Michael shared something profound. "Before coming here, I thought my combat experience had broken something in me," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "But watching these horses, especially during this winter, I'm realizing that what I thought was broken might actually be my greatest strength. Like them, I've learned to survive in harsh conditions. Maybe now it's time to learn how to thrive." His words resonated deeply with the group. Many had struggled with seeing their military experience as anything but trauma, but the horses offered a different perspective. Like the veterans, they carried the instincts of survival, the knowledge of danger, yet remained capable of peace, connection, and joy. The winter's isolation also allowed for deeper individual healing. Marcus spent long hours with Spirit, their relationship evolving in the quiet of the snow-covered valley. The stallion's presence during the generator crisis had marked a turning point, a demonstration that trust could exist alongside independence. One crystal-clear morning, as Marcus cleared paths between buildings, Spirit approached closer than ever before. The horse's breath created clouds in the frigid air as he stood just a few feet away, watching Marcus work. In that moment, Marcus, understood something vital about their connection. "We're not so different, are we?" He spoke softly, pausing in his work, both learning to balance freedom with community, strength with gentleness, survival with peace. The winter crisis also attracted unexpected support. When news of Thunder Valley's situation reached the outside world, neighboring communities rallied to help. Local pilots volunteered for supply runs, ranchers offered equipment and feed, and military veterans from across the country sent resources and encouragement. This outpouring of support led to the creation of the Thunder Valley Network, connecting similar sanctuaries and veteran programs across the country. The harsh winter had revealed not just their vulnerability, but also their strength and the breadth of their impact. Dr. Rodriguez, making a difficult journey through the snow for her monthly visit, brought news that validated their winter experiences. "The V is fascinated by how you've handled this crisis," she announced during a staff meeting. "They're particularly interested in how the extreme conditions have actually accelerated healing for many veterans. They're calling it natural stress, inoculation." As winter began to loosen its grip, Thunder Valley emerged stronger. The horses had grown hardier, the veterans more confident, and the bonds between them deeper. The challenges had proved what Marcus had always believed, that healing happened not by avoiding difficulty, but by moving through it with wisdom and support. Spring's first warmth revealed new growth throughout the sanctuary. Paths worn through. The snow, by both horses and humans, had created natural trails that would serve well in the coming seasons. The solar systems had been improved, buildings reinforced, and emergency procedures refined. But the most significant changes were in the people themselves. Veterans who had arrived broken and isolated now moved with quiet confidence, their healing enhanced rather than hindered by the winter's trials. Like spirits heard, they had learned to face challenges without losing their essential nature. As the snow melted and the first green shoots appeared, Thunder Valley began preparing for a new chapter. The winter's lessons would be incorporated into their program, creating a more robust and comprehensive approach to healing. They had discovered that true strength came not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with the wild wisdom of the horses as their guide. As spring breathed new life into Thunder Valley, an unexpected visitor arrived at the sanctuary's gates. Dr. James Morrison, a renowned equine behavioral specialist, had traveled from Europe after hearing about the unique relationship between the veterans and wild horses. His arrival coincided with a remarkable event. Spirits Heard had welcomed several new foals, their wobbly legs and untamed spirits bringing fresh energy to the valley. "In my 30 years of studying wild horses, I've never seen anything quite like this," Dr. Morrison remarked, observing how Spirits Heard interacted with the veterans. The horses maintain their wild nature while exhibiting unprecedented levels of cooperative behavior with humans. It's as if they've developed a new social dynamic altogether. Marcus had noticed this evolution too. The winter's challenges had created a subtle but profound shift in the relationship between the sanctuary's human and equine inhabitants. The horses, while remaining completely wild, showed an almost intuitive understanding of when veterans were struggling with emotional storms. One morning, as Marcus led a group therapy session in the open meadow, they witnessed something extraordinary. Michael, the veteran who had found new purpose during the winter crisis, was sharing his story of losing his entire unit in an ambush. As his voice began to crack with emotion, Spirits Heard, grazing nearby, slowly arranged themselves in a protective semicircle around the group. "They're holding space for us," Sarah observed softly. "Just like we learned to do in combat, watching each other's backs, but from a distance that allows for both safety and dignity." Dr. Morrison spent weeks documenting these interactions, his initial skepticism transforming into passionate advocacy. "What you've created here isn't just therapy," he explained during an evening presentation. "It's a new model of human-animal cooperation that could revolutionize how we think about healing trauma." The sanctuary's success drew interest from international organizations working with trauma survivors. A group of peacekeepers from war-torn regions arrived to study Thunder Valley's methods, bringing their own experiences of healing alongside wild creatures. Among them was Sophia, a former UN peacekeeper who had worked with elephant sanctuaries in Africa. "In my country," she shared, "we've seen how animals affected by war zones develop extraordinary emotional intelligence. They recognize trauma in others because they've experienced it themselves." This perspective added a new dimension to Thunder Valley's understanding of their work. The horses weren't just random wild animals. They were creatures who had known their own forms of struggle, displacement, and adaptation. Their resilience offered a mirror for human healing. The sanctuary expanded its program to include what they called wild wisdom workshops, where veterans could learn from both human experts and the horses themselves. These sessions combined traditional therapy with natural observation, allowing participants to discover their own path to healing through the example of the wild horses. Kelly, who had become one of the program's most effective leaders, developed a unique approach she called motion as medicine. Veterans would mirror the horses' movements, learning to be simultaneously alert and relaxed, powerful and gentle. "The horses teach us that strength doesn't have to mean tension," she explained to a group of new arrivals. "Watch how they move. There's power in their bodies, but also a natural flow. That's what we lost in combat, the ability to be strong without being rigid." The arrival of several female veterans brought new insights to the program. Many had faced unique challenges in the military, and their perspective on healing through connection with the wild horses added depth to Thunder Valley's approach. Lieutenant Maria Ramirez, a former Marine helicopter pilot, found particular resonance with the way the mares protected their foals. "In the military, we're taught to suppress our nurturing instincts," she observed. "But these horses show us that protection and gentleness can coexist with strength." Spirit seemed to sense the importance of these developments. The stallion began allowing closer observation of the herd's family dynamics, particularly how they integrated new members and cared for their young. This natural display of community and protection offered powerful lessons for the veterans struggling to rebuild their own sense of belonging. Dr. Morrison's research led to an unexpected opportunity. The European Union was launching a major initiative to help refugees from conflict zones, and they wanted to incorporate Thunder Valley's methods. The sanctuary would serve as a model for similar programs across the globe. "What you've discovered here transcends cultural and language barriers," Dr. Morrison explained. "The wisdom of these wild horses speaks to something universal in human experience, the need to heal without losing our essential nature." As Thunder Valley's influence grew, Marcus remained focused on the heart of their mission. Each morning he would walk the property at dawn, watching how spirits herd moved through their own healing rituals, the gentle grooming between herd members, the patient teaching of foals, the constant but calm awareness of their surroundings. One such morning, he witnessed a scene that captured everything Thunder Valley had become. A new veteran, still haunted by fresh combat memories, sat alone in the meadow, overwhelmed by a panic attack. Before any humans could respond, one of Spirit's gentlest mares broke from the herd, approaching the veteran with careful steps. The mare didn't make physical contact but stood nearby, her presence steady and calming. Gradually, the veteran's breathing slowed to match the horse's rhythmic snorting. Spirit watched from a distance, as if supervising this natural intervention. When Dr. Rodriguez arrived for her regular visit, Marcus shared this story. "It's like they've become co-therapists," he said, "but on their own terms, in their own wild way." The VA formally recognized Thunder Valley's approach as a groundbreaking form of trauma treatment. The program was expanded to include research partnerships with major universities, all while maintaining the delicate balance between scientific study and natural healing. The sanctuary's success sparked a movement across the country. Other facilities began incorporating wild animal interaction into their veteran programs, though none quite matched the unique bond that had developed at Thunder Valley. As summer approached, the sanctuary prepared for its biggest challenge yet, hosting an international symposium on natural healing methodologies. Representatives from veterans organizations, wildlife conservation groups, and mental health institutions would converge on Thunder Valley to learn from their experience. But even as the sanctuary gained worldwide recognition, Marcus never forgot the simple truth at the heart of their success. One evening, as he watched Spirit lead his herd in their twilight rituals, he shared this insight with a group of new arrivals. "These horses didn't heal us by trying to heal us," he said softly. "They healed us by being exactly what they are, wild, free, and authentic. They showed us that our own healing doesn't come from changing who we are, but from rediscovering our true nature." The gathered veterans watched in respectful silence as Spirit's herd moved through the golden light of sunset, their movements a testimony to the power of remaining wild while choosing connection. In their example, countless wounded warriors had found their way back to themselves, discovering that healing wasn't about forgetting the past, but about learning to run free despite it. Thunder Valley had become more than a sanctuary. It was a living demonstration of how nature's wisdom could guide human healing. As the day's light faded, Spirit's silhouette stood proud against the darkening sky, a symbol of the wild strength that lived within everyone who had found their way to this remarkable valley. The International Symposium at Thunder Valley brought an unexpected revelation that would test everything the sanctuary stood for. As delegates from around the world gathered to learn about the program's success, a more urgent situation was developing in the hills beyond the sanctuary's boundaries. Marcus first noticed something was wrong when Spirit's herd began displaying unusual behavior. The normally calm and confident horses seemed agitated, their movements more erratic than usual. Having learned to read their signals over the years, Marcus knew this wasn't ordinary anxiety. Sarah, using her military intelligence background, organized a reconnaissance of the surrounding area. What they discovered was alarming. A large mining company had quietly purchased adjacent land and was preparing for extensive operations. The impact on both the sanctuary and the wild horses would be devastating. "They're planning to blast through these ridges," Sarah reported during an emergency meeting. "The noise alone would traumatize the horses, not to mention the environmental impact on their grazing lands." The timing couldn't have been worse. With international attention focused on Thunder Valley, any conflict could jeopardize their emerging partnerships and funding opportunities. Yet the threat to their work, and more importantly to the horses, couldn't be ignored. Dr. Morrison, still present from his research visit, offered a unique perspective. "Perhaps this is an opportunity," he suggested. "The world is watching. Show them not just how you heal with these horses, but how you fight for them." The veterans of Thunder Valley mobilized with familiar precision, but this time their mission was different. Instead of weapons and combat tactics, they employed media strategy, environmental law, and community organizing. Each veteran brought their unique skills to the battle. Kelly initiated contact with environmental groups, leveraging her mechanical expertise to explain how the mining operation would affect the water table. Michael, who had worked in military public affairs, coordinated with media outlets. Lieutenant Ramirez used her pilot's knowledge to document the potential impact from above, capturing drone footage of the pristine wilderness under threat. But it was the horses themselves who provided the most powerful argument. During a crucial county meeting, Marcus presented video of spirits heard working with traumatized veterans. The footage showed moments of profound healing, moments that would be impossible if the sanctuary's peace was shattered by industrial operations. "These horses aren't just wild animals," Marcus testified. "They're partners in healing. They've helped hundreds of veterans find their way back from the brink. We're not just protecting land, we're protecting hope." The mining company fought back with promises of jobs and economic development. They offered to relocate the horses, missing the essential point that it was their wildness, their freedom, that made the program work. In the midst of this battle, something remarkable happened. Spirits heard began venturing closer to the sanctuary's buildings than ever before, as if sensing the need for unity in the face of threat. Veterans who had been hesitant to share their stories publicly found courage in the horses' steady presence. One evening, as the sanctuary community gathered to discuss strategy, they witnessed an extraordinary scene. Spirit led his entire herd in a display of natural beauty and power, running in perfect formation across the sunset-lit valley. The visiting delegates, many of whom had been skeptical about the program's claims, watched in awe. "This is what we stand to lose," Cooper said quietly. "Not just horses, not just land, but magic." The fight attracted unexpected allies. Local ranchers, once skeptical of the sanctuary, recognized the threat to their own way of life. Indigenous leaders spoke about the sacred nature of the land and its healing properties. Environmental scientists documented the unique ecosystem that had developed around the horses' grazing patterns. Dr. Rodriguez brought VA officials to witness the program firsthand. "What these veterans have built here," she argued, "is more valuable than any mineral wealth. This is about healing our warriors, about keeping a promise to those who served." The mining company's lawyers presented charts and graphs showing projected profits. Thunder Valley responded with stories of transformation. Veterans who had found purpose, families reunited, lives saved. They showed how the sanctuary's approach was being adopted worldwide, creating a ripple effect of healing that couldn't be measured in dollars. Sarah organized a peaceful demonstration that drew thousands of supporters. Veterans from across the country arrived to stand with Thunder Valley, many sharing their own stories of how connection with nature had helped them heal. The international delegates, moved by what they witnessed, added their voices to the cause. Representatives from countries still dealing with the aftermath of war spoke about the global importance of preserving places of healing. As pressure mounted, the mining company made one final offer. They would build around the sanctuary, leaving a small buffer zone. It was a tempting compromise, but Marcus knew it wouldn't work. The horses needed more than just space. They needed true wilderness. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a public hearing, Spirit himself appeared on a ridge, visible through the courthouse windows. The majestic stallion stood silhouetted against the sky, as if bearing witness to the proceedings. The image, captured by photographers, became a symbol of the fight. Local children wrote letters about the horses they loved to watch. Scientists presented studies showing the unique benefits of the sanctuary's approach. Veterans testified about moments of breakthrough that had saved their lives. Finally, after months of battle, victory came in an unexpected form. A consortium of conservation groups, inspired by Thunder Valley's mission, purchased the surrounding land and placed it in a permanent trust. The sanctuary would not only be protected, but expanded. The mining company's withdrawal was followed by celebration at Thunder Valley, but also reflection. The fight had changed them all, showing how their individual healing had prepared them for a larger purpose. "We didn't just save this land," Marcus told the community gathered around the evening fire. "We proved that what happens here matters far beyond these valleys. We showed that healing ourselves and protecting the wild can be the same thing." The experience led to new developments in the sanctuary's program. Veterans learned to channel their warrior spirit into environmental stewardship. The protective instincts that had served them in combat found new expression in conservation and advocacy. Spirits heard seemed to sense the change. They moved through their expanded territory with renewed confidence, their freedom now secured not just for themselves, but for future generations of horses and veterans who would find healing in this valley. The International Symposium, which had nearly been overshadowed by the crisis, became a celebration of resistance and renewal. Delegates witnessed not just a program of healing, but a community willing to fight for what they believed in. Dr. Morrison's final report noted something profound. The very act of defending this sanctuary became part of the healing process. These veterans found that their strength, their training, their spirit of service could be transformed into something beautiful. Thunder Valley emerged stronger, its mission clearer than ever. They had shown that healing wasn't just about finding peace. It was about having the courage to protect it. The wild horses had taught them how to heal, and in return, they had become guardians of the wild. As summer faded into autumn, Marcus stood with Spirit at their usual meeting place. The stallion's presence was different now. Not just wild and free, but somehow more connected, more trusting. They had faced a threat together and emerged victorious. "You knew, didn't you?" Marcus said softly. "You knew we needed this fight to complete our healing." Spirit's reply was a gentle nickering, his wild eyes reflecting the wisdom that had guided them all along. In protecting the sanctuary, they had discovered that their own healing was bound up with something larger than themselves, the preservation of wildness itself. Autumn painted Thunder Valley in brilliant colors when news arrived that would challenge the sanctuary in an entirely new way. A devastating wildfire in a neighboring state had displaced a large herd of wild horses, and authorities were desperately seeking safe havens for the traumatized animals. The request came directly to Thunder Valley, Would they be willing to take in these horses, many of whom had been severely injured in their escape from the flames? Marcus gathered the sanctuary's leadership team to discuss this unprecedented situation. This wasn't just about offering shelter. These horses had experienced profound trauma, much like the veterans they helped. The parallels weren't lost on anyone. These horses are combat survivors too, Kelly observed during the meeting. They've run through fire, lost their homes, their herd members. They're just like us when we first came here. The decision to help was unanimous, but the logistics were daunting. The displaced herd numbered 30 horses, nearly doubling their current population. More challenging still was the question of how Spirit's herd would react to these newcomers, especially in their traumatized state. Dr. Morrison, who had remained at Thunder Valley to document their successful defense against the mining company, offered his expertise. This could be a remarkable opportunity to study how wild horses process and recover from trauma. It could deepen our understanding of both equine and human healing. The sanctuary mobilized with military precision. Veterans with medical training prepared to assist the veterinarians. Others worked to create temporary corrals and recovery spaces that would allow the injured horses to heal while maintaining as much freedom as possible. The garden team increased feed production, and new water sources were established. When the trailers arrived carrying the displaced horses, the sight was heart-wrenching. Many bore visible burns, and all showed signs of smoke inhalation. Their eyes carried a haunted look that many of the veterans recognized from their own mirrors. "They've got 1,000-yard stares," Michael observed quietly, "just like we did." The first few days were critical. Working around the clock, the sanctuary's team treated injuries, provided nourishment, and most importantly, gave the traumatized horses space to process their experience. Veterans who had initially come to Thunder Valley for their own healing now found themselves on the giving end of the therapeutic relationship. Spirit's reaction to the newcomers surprised everyone. Instead of displaying territorial aggression, the stallion approached the recovery area with careful curiosity. He seemed to understand something about their trauma, maintaining a respectful distance while establishing a calming presence. Sarah, observing this behavior, developed a new theory. "It's like he recognizes their warrior spirit," she explained. "They've fought their own battle, survived their own war. He respects that." As the displaced horses began to recover physically, the sanctuary faced a new challenge, helping them overcome their psychological trauma. The horses, startled at the slightest sound, huddled together defensively, and showed signs of deep anxiety. Marcus recognized these symptoms all too well. "They're showing classic PTSD responses," he noted during a staff meeting. "Just like human combat veterans, they're stuck in survival mode." This realization led to an innovative approach. Veterans began sharing their own trauma recovery techniques, adapted for the horses. They created safe spaces where the animals could retreat when overwhelmed, established predictable routines to help them feel secure, and most importantly, allowed them to set the pace of their own healing. Lieutenant Ramirez, drawing on her experience with military working dogs, suggested using sound therapy. They began playing recordings of natural forest sounds at low volumes, gradually helping the horses dissociate these noises from the roar of the wildfire that had driven them from their home. The most remarkable development came when Spirit's herd began to interact with the newcomers. The wild stallion seemed to instinctively understand what the traumatized horses needed. He would lead his herd in calm, deliberate movements near their enclosure, demonstrating peaceful behavior and natural confidence. Dr. Morrison documented this unprecedented interaction. "We're witnessing something extraordinary," he reported. "These wild horses are essentially conducting their own form of group therapy. They're showing their injured companions how to be wild and free again." The sanctuary's human residents found their own healing deepening through this process. Many veterans discovered that helping these traumatized horses gave new meaning to their own struggles. Their combat experience, which had long felt like a burden, became valuable wisdom in understanding and helping fellow survivors. Kelly developed a program she called Parallel Healing, where veterans worked through their own trauma alongside the recovering horses. "We're all speaking the same language," she explained, "the language of survival, of recovery, of finding our way back to life." As weeks passed, the transformation in the displaced horses became evident. Burns healed, fear-driven behaviors decreased, and most importantly, they began showing interest in their surroundings. The 1,000-yard stares gradually softened into curious gazes. Thunder Valley's success with these trauma survivors attracted attention from wildlife rehabilitation experts worldwide. The sanctuary's approach of combining veteran experience with natural healing processes was proving remarkably effective. The most powerful moment came when Spirit first invited the recovered horses to join his herd. It happened naturally, without human intervention. One morning, he simply led his herd to the recovery area's fence line and waited. The once traumatized horses approached cautiously, and in a display of extraordinary trust, Spirit welcomed them into his family. "This is what real integration looks like," Marcus observed to Dr. Rodriguez during her visit. "Not forcing, not rushing, just creating the space for natural healing to occur." The expanded herd became a living testament to resilience. The formerly displaced horses, while bearing physical scars from their ordeal, regained their wild spirit. They ran alongside Spirit's original herd, their movements becoming more confident, more free with each passing day. This success led to Thunder Valley being designated as an official wildlife trauma recovery center. The sanctuary began receiving requests to help other animals affected by natural disasters, expanding their mission while staying true to their core purpose of healing through connection with the wild. The experience transformed Thunder Valley's approach to human healing as well. Veterans who arrived at the sanctuary now had the opportunity to participate in animal rehabilitation, finding their own recovery enhanced by helping other traumatized beings. As winter approached again, Marcus stood watching the unified herd move across the valley. The once separate groups had become indistinguishable, their shared experience of trauma and recovery creating bonds stronger than their differences. Spirit, leading this expanded family, caught Marcus's eye across the distance. In that moment, Marcus understood something profound about healing. It wasn't just about recovering from trauma, but about using that experience to help others find their way back to freedom. The sanctuary had evolved into something even more powerful than its founders had imagined. It was now a place where the wounded, both human and animal, could find not just healing, but purpose, where trauma could be transformed into wisdom, and where the wild spirit could teach all creatures how to be free again. Winter's grip on Thunder Valley began to loosen when Marcus received news that would challenge everything they'd built. A young veteran named David had been found in critical condition after a suicide attempt, his last words before losing consciousness. Mentioning Thunder Valley, he'd been trying to reach the sanctuary when his demons finally overwhelmed him. The incident shook Marcus to his core. Despite all their success, there were still warriors they couldn't reach in time. As David fought for life in the hospital, Marcus gathered the sanctuary's leadership to discuss how they could expand their reach beyond their physical boundaries. "We've created something beautiful here," Marcus addressed the group, his voice heavy with emotion. "But what about the ones who can't make it to us? The ones still lost in their own darkness?" Sarah, drawing on her intelligence background, proposed a radical solution. "What if we could bring Thunder Valley to them? Not just through videos or stories, but through actual connection." The idea sparked an innovative initiative. Using cutting-edge technology, they began developing a virtual reality program that could transport isolated veterans into Thunder Valley's healing environment. Kelly's engineering skills proved invaluable as they worked to capture the essence of their sanctuary in digital form. But Spirit, as always, had his own wisdom to share. During the filming process, the stallion began displaying unprecedented behavior. He would approach the cameras deliberately, his presence somehow more powerful when captured through the lens. It was as if he understood the importance of reaching those who couldn't physically be there. Dr. Morrison, fascinated by this development, began studying how the horse's healing presence might translate through technology. "We're not just creating a virtual experience," he explained. "We're building a bridge between the wild and the wounded, no matter where they are." The project expanded beyond their initial vision. Veterans who had found healing at Thunder Valley began traveling to VA hospitals and rehabilitation centers, bringing not just their stories, but also immersive experiences of the sanctuary. Through virtual reality headsets, troubled veterans could stand in the valley, watch Spirit's herd run free, and feel the first stirrings of hope. Lieutenant Ramirez led these outreach missions, her own journey from trauma to healing lending authenticity to the program. "When they put on those headsets," she reported, "something changes. It's like they can finally see a way forward, even if they can't physically be here yet." The impact was immediate and profound. Veterans who had isolated themselves for years began reaching out. Some would spend hours in the virtual valley, their vital signs noticeably improving as they watched the horses move across digital landscapes that felt incredibly real. David, recovering in the hospital, became one of the first to experience this virtual connection. Though still too weak to travel, he could now spend time with Spirit's herd through the VR program. His doctors reported remarkable improvements in his recovery once these sessions began. "It's not just about seeing the horses," David explained during a video call with Marcus. "It's about feeling connected to something wild and free, even when you're confined to a hospital bed. It reminds you that healing is possible." The program's success led to partnerships with major technology companies interested in developing therapeutic applications. But Thunder Valley remained focused on their core mission, using the healing power of wild horses to help wounded warriors find their way back to life. Spirit's herd continued to play a crucial role, their natural behaviors providing powerful metaphors for recovery. The way they moved together, supported each other, and maintained their wild nature while accepting human presence became central to the virtual experience. Cooper, watching a group of veterans experience the virtual valley for the first time, observed something profound. "Look at their faces," he said quietly to Marcus. "They're having the same reaction we all did when we first saw Spirit. Some things can't be diminished by technology. They can only be amplified." The virtual program became a gateway, helping veterans take the first step toward actual visits to Thunder Valley. Many who had been too intimidated or unsure to make the journey found courage through their digital experiences. One such veteran was Maria, a former Army medic who had isolated herself for years after multiple deployments. After experiencing Thunder Valley virtually, she finally found the strength to visit in person. When she arrived, Spirit approached, as if he recognized her from her virtual presence. "It's exactly like I saw through the headset," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But now I can feel it. I can feel alive again." The success of the virtual program led to an unexpected development. Other countries began requesting access to Thunder Valley's healing approach. Veterans from around the world, dealing with their own trauma and isolation, could now connect with the sanctuary's healing environment. Dr. Rodriguez, reviewing the program's impact, noted something remarkable. "The virtual experience isn't replacing real connection," she explained. "It's facilitating it. It's giving people the hope they need to take that first step toward healing." Marcus, watching Spirit interact with both physical and virtual visitors, realized they had discovered something profound about the nature of healing itself. The wild spirit that had helped him find his way back to life could now reach others, in their darkest moments, offering a lifeline when they needed it most. David eventually made it to Thunder Valley in person, his hospital bracelet still on his wrist. When Spirit approached him, the young veteran broke down, crying. "I've been here every day in my mind," he said. "It kept me alive until I could make it here for real." The sanctuary continued to evolve, blending technology with tradition, finding new ways to share their healing message while maintaining the essential wildness that made it all possible. The virtual program became a crucial part of their outreach, but never replaced the raw power of direct connection with the horses. Spirit, ever the wise leader, seemed to understand his role in this expanded mission. He would often pause during the filming sessions, his presence commanding and intentional, as if making sure his energy could reach through the digital divide to touch those who needed it most. As spring approached again, Thunder Valley had transformed into something even more powerful than before. It was no longer just a physical sanctuary, but a beacon of hope that could reach into the darkest corners of trauma and isolation, offering a path back to life through the wisdom of wild horses. Marcus, standing at his usual spot by the fence line, watched as Spirit led his herd through their evening routine. The stallion paused, turning to face one of the virtual reality cameras, his wild spirit somehow tangible even through the lens. "You've helped us bridge the gap," Marcus said softly, "between the wild and the wounded, between isolation and connection, between despair and hope." Spirit's response was a gentle nickering, his presence both ancient and immediate, a reminder that some connections transcend all boundaries, even the ones we create in our own minds. Spring brought an unexpected crisis to Thunder Valley that would test everything they'd built. A mysterious illness began spreading through Spirit's herd, causing the horses to become lethargic and weak. The sight of these once vibrant creatures struggling sent waves of concern through the sanctuary's community. Dr. Elena Martinez, now the sanctuary's lead veterinary researcher, worked tirelessly to identify the cause. "Whatever this is, it's nothing I've seen before," she reported during an emergency meeting. "The symptoms don't match any known equine diseases." The timing couldn't have been worse. Thunder Valley's virtual program had just connected with a group of severely traumatized veterans in a specialized PTSD unit. These warriors, many of whom had lost hope, were finding their first glimpses of healing through their digital connection with spirits heard. Marcus felt the weight of both responsibilities, protecting the horses while maintaining the lifeline to veterans who desperately needed it. "We can't let either of them down," he told the gathered staff. "These horses saved us. Now it's our turn to save them." The sanctuary transformed into a round-the-clock operation. Veterans with medical training worked alongside veterinarians. Those with experience in biological warfare helped establish containment protocols. The military precision that had once served them in combat now focused on saving their four-legged healers. Spirit, despite his own obvious discomfort, continued to lead his herd with remarkable strength. He seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, bringing the sick horses closer to the sanctuary's buildings, where they could be more easily monitored and treated. Sarah's intelligence background proved invaluable as they traced the illness's origin. "Look at this pattern," she pointed out, mapping the spread of symptoms. "It's not random. There's something systematic about it." Lieutenant Ramirez, using her pilot's skills, conducted aerial surveys of the surrounding territory. The breakthrough came when she noticed unusual discoloration in a stream feeding the horses' watering holes. Further investigation revealed illegal chemical dumping upstream, a hidden cost of the industrial development they'd fought so hard against. The discovery sparked immediate action. Kelly's engineering team designed water filtration systems, while environmental experts worked to contain the contamination. But the real challenge was healing the horses who had already been affected. Dr. Morrison, who had extensively studied the horses' social behaviors, noticed something remarkable. The healthy horses began exhibiting nurturing behaviors toward their sick companions, sharing specific plants they found in the valley. This observation led to a breakthrough in treatment. "They're showing us the cure," Dr. Martinez realized. The plants the horses sought contained natural compounds that could counteract the toxins. Traditional medicine combined with the horse's innate wisdom created a path to recovery. The crisis brought unexpected allies. Native American healers, hearing of the horse's plight, arrived offering generations of knowledge about natural remedies. Their traditional understanding of the relationship between land, animals, and healing added a profound dimension to the recovery effort. Through it all, the virtual program continued. Veterans watching through their VR headsets witnessed not just the struggle, but the incredible resilience of these wild creatures. The horses' fight for survival paralleled their own battles, creating an even deeper connection. Seeing them fight, seeing them help each other, it gives me strength to keep going, shared James, a veteran participating in the virtual program from his hospital bed. If they can overcome this, maybe I can overcome my own battles. Spirit's leadership during the crisis became legendary. Despite his own illness, he continued to guide his herd, demonstrating a strength that went beyond physical wellness. His example inspired both horses and humans, showing how true leadership meant serving others even in your own moment of weakness. The sanctuary's community worked in shifts, providing round-the-clock care while maintaining their regular programs. Veterans who had come for healing found purpose in helping their four-legged therapists. The roles of healer and patient blurred, creating a deeper understanding of reciprocal healing. David, who had first connected with Thunder Valley through the virtual program, now took a leading role in the recovery effort. His medical training combined with his personal experience of healing created a unique perspective on the situation. "These horses taught me how to live again," he said during a late-night treatment session. "Now they're teaching us about resilience, about fighting through pain without losing your spirit." As the horses began to recover, their healing process revealed new insights about trauma and recovery. The way they supported each other, the balance they maintained between rest and movement, offered lessons that enhanced Thunder Valley's therapeutic approach. Dr. Rodriguez, observing the crisis response, noted how the veterans' PTSD symptoms had actually decreased during the emergency. "Having a purpose, being needed, it's as therapeutic as any treatment we could prescribe," she observed. The environmental investigations sparked by the illness led to broader changes. Thunder Valley partnered with conservation groups to protect the entire watershed. Their influence expanded beyond the sanctuary's boundaries, creating a larger safe haven for both wildlife and veterans. Spirit's recovery became a symbol of hope for everyone connected to Thunder Valley. The stallion's strength, even in illness, demonstrated how vulnerability and power could coexist. His willingness to accept help while continuing to lead transformed understanding of what real courage meant. As the crisis passed and the horses regained their health, Thunder Valley emerged stronger. The experience had deepened the bonds between all members of the community, human and equine alike. The virtual program now included stories of recovery and resilience, offering even more powerful healing metaphors for struggling veterans. Marcus, watching Spirit lead his fully recovered herd across the spring meadows, reflected on how each challenge seemed to reveal new depths of healing wisdom. The horses had shown them that true strength wasn't about avoiding weakness, but about finding power through supporting each other. The sanctuary's approach to healing evolved to incorporate these lessons. Veterans learned that their own recovery wasn't a solitary journey, but part of a larger web of mutual support and understanding. The horse's example showed how community, vulnerability, and strength could work together in the healing process. As spring bloomed into full flower, Thunder Valley stood as a testament to resilience and reciprocal healing. The crisis had proven that the connection between veterans and wild horses went far deeper than therapy. It was a partnership of spirits, each making the other stronger through their shared journey of recovery. Spirit's eyes held new wisdom as he gazed across his restored kingdom. The stallion had always been a symbol of freedom and strength, but now he also represented something equally powerful: the ability to remain wild and proud while accepting help and offering it to others. The setting sun painted the valley in hues of hope, its light touching both the physical sanctuary and its virtual extension across the digital realm. In both worlds, the message was the same. Healing comes not just from receiving help, but from the courage to give it, even in our own moments of need. The final chapter of Thunder Valley's transformation began on a warm summer morning when Marcus received an unexpected call. The president's office was on the line. Thunder Valley had been selected for a special recognition: the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the nation. The ceremony would bring national attention to their work with veterans and wild horses. As Marcus shared the news with the sanctuary's community, Spirit appeared at the fence line, his presence as regal as ever. The stallion seemed to sense the magnitude of the moment, standing proud as cameras captured the announcement for news outlets across the country. The preparation for the ceremony sparked a profound reflection on Thunder Valley's journey. From a refuge for one homeless veteran and a wild horse to a revolutionary healing center that had transformed thousands of lives, their story embodied the very essence of American resilience and innovation. David, now a full-time staff member, led the effort to document Thunder Valley's impact. "It's not just about the numbers," he explained during a planning meeting. "It's about the ripple effect. Every veteran who heals here becomes a beacon of hope for others." The sanctuary's success had sparked a movement. Similar programs were emerging across the country, each adapting Thunder Valley's model to their local conditions. But none could quite replicate the special bond that had formed between spirits heard and their wounded warriors. As the ceremony approached, veterans whose lives had been transformed by Thunder Valley began arriving from across the nation. Each carried their own story of how this unique partnership between wild horses and broken soldiers had helped them find their way back to life. Maria, the former Army medic who had first experienced Thunder Valley through virtual reality, now ran her own equine therapy program. "This place showed me that healing isn't about forgetting," she shared during a gathering. "It's about finding new purpose in our scars." The night before the ceremony, Thunder Valley hosted a special sunset gathering. Veterans from different eras, branches, and backgrounds sat together under the open sky, sharing stories of transformation. Spirit led his herd in a natural display of unity and strength, moving in perfect harmony across the darkening valley. Lieutenant Ramirez, recording the moment for their archives, captured something extraordinary. As the veterans shared their stories, the horses gradually moved closer, forming a protective circle around the gathering. It was as if they understood the significance of this moment of reflection and celebration. The ceremony itself was held at dawn, Spirit's favorite, a time to appear. As officials and dignitaries gathered, the wild stallion led his herd to the ridge overlooking the event. Their silhouettes against the rising sun created an image that would become iconic, nature's warriors standing witness to the recognition of their human counterparts. The president's speech highlighted how Thunder Valley had revolutionized the understanding of trauma recovery. "This sanctuary has shown us that healing doesn't always come from traditional sources," he declared. "Sometimes it takes the wild spirit of nature to help us find our way back to ourselves." Marcus, accepting the medal on behalf of the sanctuary, spoke from the heart. "This honor belongs to every veteran who found hope here, every horse who taught us to be free again, and especially to Spirit, who showed us that true strength comes from helping others heal." As if on cue, Spirit let out a powerful whinny that echoed across the valley. The crowd fell silent, witnessing the profound connection between the wild horse and the sanctuary he had helped create. The ceremony marked not just a recognition, but a new beginning. The national attention brought resources and opportunities to expand Thunder Valley's mission. But more importantly, it validated what they had discovered, that healing could come from the most unexpected sources. Dr. Rodriguez, who had first pointed Marcus toward Thunder Valley during his darkest days, summarized it perfectly. What began as a last resort for one homeless veteran has become a model for how we understand trauma, resilience, and the healing power of connecting with something wild and free. The legacy of Thunder Valley extended far beyond its physical boundaries. The virtual program had reached veterans in the most remote corners of the world. The research conducted there had revolutionized trauma treatment, but most importantly, it had shown that no one was beyond hope. As the dignitaries departed, Marcus stood at his usual spot by the fence line. Spirit approached, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared understanding. They had both come so far from their first encounter, the broken soldier and the wild horse who had helped him find his way home. The sanctuary would continue to evolve, adapting to new challenges and finding new ways to help wounded warriors heal. But its core truth would remain unchanged, that sometimes the wildest part of ourselves is exactly what we need to become whole again. Thunder Valley stood as a testament to the power of unexpected connections, of finding strength in vulnerability, and of the healing that happens when we allow ourselves to run free with the wild spirits who choose to walk beside us. The story of Marcus and Spirit, of broken soldiers and wild horses, had become more than just a tale of recovery. It was a reminder that healing isn't about returning to who we were, but about discovering who we can become when we find the courage to embrace our own wild nature. As the sun set on this chapter of Thunder Valley's journey, Spirit led his herd in one final display of freedom and grace. Their hoofbeats echoed across the valley, a rhythm that had become the heartbeat of healing for countless wounded warriors. The medal would hang in the sanctuary's main hall, but the real treasure of Thunder Valley wasn't in any award or recognition. It was in the daily miracles of veterans finding their way back to life, guided by the wisdom of wild horses who had chosen to become partners in healing. Marcus watched as Spirit disappeared into the gathering dusk, knowing that tomorrow would bring new veterans seeking hope, new challenges to overcome, and new opportunities for transformation. The work wasn't finished. It was just beginning. For as long as there were wounded warriors needing hope and wild horses willing to show the way, Thunder Valley would continue to be a place where broken spirits could learn to run free again. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.